Jim Setzer with Images by Design. Here's my review of the Nikon Z7 full-frame mirrorless camera. I've been shooting this camera for almost a month now. It's got to be the most talked about Nikon body maybe ever. A lot of controversy surrounding this camera and what it can and can't do. It's been probed and discussed and argued and vilified and heralded by so many on YouTube. I can't repeat all that. All I can do is share my experience shooting this camera over the last month. And I'll tell you, like many others, it's been a love-hate relationship. Well, let's just get into it. If you saw my preview, told you I did not buy any of the native S-series, the Z-mount lenses for this thing. The initial offering Nikon came out with really didn't excite me one bit. I know the people who shot it, they say they're perfectly fine lenses, and that's okay. And if I had a different workflow or maybe a different kind of photography, that might have been the way to go. But like a lot of us, I've got a huge investment in F-mount glass, and I wanted to see how this could perform and protect that investment a little bit. So I bought the body, and I bought the FTZ adapter only. I've shot it with all my Nikon lenses, and I've shot it with some third-party lenses. We'll talk about those as we get around there. Let me start with my thoughts on the ergonomics of this camera. Starting with the grip, I love the grip on this camera. Of all the mirrorless cameras I've shot, this one feels the most comfortable in the hand, and I've got these big fat meat hooks, and I can comfortably get my hand around this, even with a big heavy lens on it. It doesn't feel unbalanced to me because of the big grip. I can hold a large lens comfortably, and I feel safe doing that. You heard me complain about the loss of the dedicated focus mode button and the bracket button. I've just reprogrammed those over here to the F1 and F2 buttons. Now the F2 button comes shipped with that autofocus mode already programmed in there. You can put something else there if you'd like. Because you don't need a preview button anymore, the F1 button is pretty much open to put whatever you want in there. So I put the bracket button there, and it didn't take much learning to be able to use that very effectively for my shooting out doing architecture and landscapes that required me to shoot in brackets. So that worked out okay. Coming up here to the area surrounding the shutter button, this three buttons that orbit that, the record button, the ISO button, and the exposure compensation. Exposure compensation is where it is on every other Nikon body I own, so that was no big deal. The record button is kind of raised, and that's good because I found if I'm doing combination of still and video recording, having that discrimination was there. So I have not gotten used to the placement of the ISO button way up here. It's not the same as any other body I own, and I tell you, it does feel awkward holding that button down while trying to turn auto ISO on or off or dialing up or down the base ISO. It's almost impossible to do with one hand. Coming around to the back of the camera where they moved aside a lot of the buttons that were to the left of the display and moved a few of them down here, got rid of a couple of the others. Some of the others I don't miss. This cluster down here, while it works fine, and I can find that with my thumb by touch as I have the camera up to my eye, I would have liked these buttons down here in this cluster to be a little bit more pronounced, and they could have made them a little bit larger, in my opinion. The thumbstick is great. It's just like in the D500 and the D850, and it works very, very well, especially hunting around on that screen for all of those autofocus points, which in and of themselves are quite a blessing. The information button is fully programmable. You've got a copy of it right there on the screen to touch, so I decided to map other things to this I button, and that worked out really well for me as well. The eyepiece, many people complain that this eyepiece comes out quite a bit further than most Nikon bodies, and I agree it does, but you know what? I like it. Why? Because I'm left eye dominant. I put the eyepiece to my left eye, meaning my nose is up against this touch screen, and by not smashing my nose into the touch screen, I can use it a lot more effectively. So I like it. Your mileage may vary. I love the enhancement to the top view display. Gone is the segmented LCD display from the 1980s, replaced by a more modern matrix LCD display that is very nice and context sensitive, so I like that quite a lot. I really wish they would have put the full professional version of the mode dial with the buttons on there, but they didn't. I don't know why. The camera would have not suffered at all from a little bit more professional dual dial over here. Tilty screen. I love tilt screens on all my Nikons that have had it. I really wish it had a flippy screen so I could actually use this for blogging or video recording myself, but it doesn't have that. Everybody laments, of course, the single card slot. That one's been beaten to death. I'll tell you, I don't really mind it all that much because I don't always require full backups. In other words, I'm not always shooting directly for a customer myself. So when I do need redundancy, the great improvements in SnapBridge make that an actual very viable option for creating those backups for me. SnapBridge still isn't perfect, but it's much, much better than it has been in the past. Even with the D850, it's better than that. So I can see it as a viable, proper backup for those times when you need to have redundancy in your media. Again, I don't have any native glass, so I shot everything using this FTZ adapter. I've heard people complain about its depth being slightly different than the depth of the bottom of the camera plate. I didn't find it to be all that distractive because I wasn't moving like quick release plates on and off between the two of them. Probably because I don't have any native glass, and therefore I just put the quick release plate on the adapter. It worked fine for me. Now let's get to the glass. I shot every Nikon lens that I own, including some DX lenses, and they all perform very well. Autofocus was quick. Autofocus worked in every mode with just a few exceptions. I'll talk about those in a minute. And they all created beautiful shots. Autofocus nailed a very high percentage, probably as good as, say, my D750. I don't know, maybe not as good as a D850, but very respectable. I thought they did a good job with the autofocus adapted to F-mount glass. Then I went over to my relatively large selection of Tamron Generation 1 VR lenses, and different story. In my preview video, you saw me realize that this long telephoto, this 150 to 600, didn't autofocus at all. I just saw it as a manual focus lens, and there it is. So I don't know about you, but I can't shoot at 500 millimeters manual focus moving subjects. It's not going to happen. So that lens is out as far as compatibility with this body, in my opinion. Portrait lens 70 to 200 f2.8. That did pretty well with stills. Autofocus was good. I didn't get the hit rate that I got with any of the native Nikon lenses, Nikkor lenses, but still pretty respectable for what it was, considering it is third-party lenses and considering that Nikon does not publish the spec for their lens mount. So all the compatibility is backward engineering on the part of, in this case, Tamron. I also shot with the 2470, which I'm recording on right now, so I can't show you that lens, but similar results in still mode. Then we get to shooting video, and I found that while the Nikon lenses on the FTZ adapter worked, I got different results in the AFF mode, having that camera try to track focus in video. Some lenses, like this 50mm f1.4, it worked well, but boy was it chattery. It was very loud. Loud enough that unless I had a full, complete, separate sound system, that noise made the video unusable. If you'd pick up too much noise, either with the onboard stereo speakers or even with a directional mic mounted to the camera body. So that one was out. I actually found that the quietest lens was this 28 to 300 millimeter. It's not the fastest glass in the world. It's not the sharpest lens in the world, but I found that combination with the FTZ adapter on here created really beautiful focus pulls. It was nice and quiet. The videos that I shot with that combination turned out really, really well. Now when I go to the Tamron lenses, and again I've got a good investment in these, hoping that both 24 to 70 and the 70 to 200 would allow that similar kind of video experience. But unfortunately, if you have a situation where you're constantly setting focus, these things end up resetting your camera like every 6 or 7 seconds. It's terrible. It's ridiculous. And in fact, I found going back and trying to shoot still subjects where I had to find focus quickly, I got the same kind of reset happening with still photography. So while these work fine for still portraiture, relatively still subjects, moving subjects, they're just simply not going to work. It just keeps resetting every time. So that's very frustrating. So none of the Tamron, again, these are first gen VR lenses, are really usable on this camera body. Quite a shame. I could have almost excused quite a lot of that for my particular requirements for this camera. I've got enough Nikon glass that I think I've got a full range to be able to do the video work that I needed with this camera. However, it comes down to this, and I'm going to hold that thought because I'm going to talk about the placement of these I/O ports for just 1 second. Now this front flap, again, the weather sealing, by the way, works fine. I took this out in mist and rain, and I didn't have any problems with it. Now this front flap covers and protects the microphone port and the headphone jack. Makes perfect sense. Those things would be used together, and if you didn't use one, you probably didn't use the other. So that made sense. But then you get to this rear flap, and I can't for the life of me figure out why they put these ports in this particular order. The bottom of the flap, where you could kind of pull away part of the flap and leave the rest of it nice and sealed, is the intervalometer port, or GPS or Wi-Fi port, which you don't need the Wi-Fi port, of course. GPS, yeah, maybe you'd plug that stupid dongle in there, but I don't see why that is the one that's basically the most accessible. Peeling it away, in the middle of that grouping, you've got the HDMI port. Fair enough. But the port that you would get to the most often, the USB Type-C port, is way up here at the top. You have to peel this thing all the way off to get to this port. Why do I think you need that port more often? Well, honestly, there's no laptop or tablet on the planet that has an XQD built-in reader. A lot of us, when we travel, don't want to carry all these additional parts and dongles and accessories. So we're going to plug a USB-C cable into this, and we're just going to read directly off the camera into our editing computer, whatever that is. So having it way up here at the top made no sense to me. It should have been down at the bottom, where I could have peeled away part of the flap and gotten to that port that I'd use all the time. Other, I guess, love-hate with this particular port is, yes, you can run the camera by USB power on that port, but when you're doing that, it doesn't charge the battery at the same time. That seems kind of strange. You can charge the battery from things like a laptop that supports power charging through USB SS ports. I was able to charge the battery with cables other than what came with it, or that AC adapter that plugs directly into this port. I don't like that when you're charging it, the only indicator of how far it's got to go to charge is the one little orange light that's hidden down here underneath the camera strap clip. Hard to see, and you have no idea what charge level or how long it's going to take. You have to turn the camera on to see the battery level and how far charged it is, and of course when the camera is on, it's not charging. So go figure all that. And now back to this HDMI port, and the thing that just killed this camera for me. I shoot, like in the case of this video, I'm staring at a camera. I've got an HDMI cord coming out to an 8-inch monitor because I don't have a production staff. I'm producing this myself. I'm staring at myself right now. And I need to be able to see things like the mic level to make sure that I'm not overdriving this thing. I want to make sure it's recording. I want to make sure I'm not running down the battery. So I need to be able to see all the things you normally would see on the back of the display, and I need to be able to see them in that monitor. Now, I love the idea that this thing has full log 422 video out, and the video out looks really nice. The video is beautiful, it's brilliant, but it has no mode, no display mode, where I can include in the output to this port all that critical information that I need to make this a video camera for me, my channel, the videos I shoot. So as much as I tried, and I spent 2 days and looking all over the place to see what missing menu setting it was, but no, there's simply not. The HDMI output only outputs the raw video. It doesn't provide any of the display information that I have come to know and expect. So, with all that said, I hate to say it, but this Z7 is going back. It just doesn't work for me. It may work for a lot of photographers, and it may be brilliant for them, but for my workflow, for my lens collection, for my business, this camera just doesn't do it for me. It's not usable as a video camera. It doesn't give me, I want to be able to do proper 4K videos. I want to be able to do those productions, and it doesn't do it for me. But if I'm going to have to go out and spend money on glass, I might as well look elsewhere. Blackmagic is supposed to be sending me one of their new Pocket Cinema Camera 4Ks. We'll have to see how that works out. I'm very excited about the Fuji X-T3. That looks very promising, even though it's not full frame. Just as a video camera, the cost difference, I could go out and invest in the 2 or 3 lenses I think I would need with that camera, and it works. So I may be looking at that in its place. And as far as the full frame high resolution for doing the in-studio portraiture work, yes, I truly have loved shooting this. The pictures have been gorgeous. The detail is amazing. The focus points out to the edge where everything I dreamed them to be. But for $3,400, those features that I liked are just simply not worth it to me in this particular iteration, this particular product. So I guess I'll stand by and see what Nikon comes up with in the future. In the meantime, I'm going to continue my search for the better video vlogging product review camera for me. I hope you enjoyed this review of the Nikon Z7. If you did enjoy it, please click the like down below. And if you want to see more videos from me, please do subscribe. If you like this camera, if this maybe is the camera for you, I'll put an affiliate link down at the bottom where you can go out and grab it. Please use those affiliate links wherever you see them. This is how we get back just a few pennies to barely offset some of the production costs and time in making these videos, and it doesn't cost you anything. For Images by Design, I'm Jim Setzer. Have a fantastic day.